1996, Marvel Productions produced a new and for the time quite innovative animated series called Defenders of the Earth. The core idea behind the series was to pull together a number of pulp characters from the 1930s and update them, revamp them for a 1980s child audience. What's fun about this concept is the same thing that Marvel really introduced in the 1960s in the comic books, which is the idea of a shared universe where the characters can come together from their individual solo titles to form a group. Now, despite it being produced by Marvel Productions, there were no Marvel characters in this, and I assume that's something to do with the copyright and the licensing issues around it, and I also think that's why they looked back to the 1930s pulp characters. But nevertheless, this seems like quite a cool and exciting concept to bring back characters like Flash Gordon, Ming the Merciless, the Phantom, and Mandrake the Magician, and introduce them to a whole new audience almost a half a century after their initial conception. The animated series was very successful. It ran for 65 episodes, it had its own comic book tie-in, of course, and it also had a successful toy line. And I have good memories of watching this TV show when I was a kid and playing with some of these toys as well. So I have great affection for Defenders of the Earth, and so I was really delighted when NECA announced that they were going to be producing their own line of updated 7-inch scale action figures based on the animated series. And so today I'm going to be taking a look at the Ming the Merciless figure. So starting off with the packaging, we can see that the backdrop is this sort of starry space night sky, which I think is very appropriate. That was in a lot of the promotional images for the TV show, so very happy with this. In the bottom left hand corner we have an illustrated image of Ming, and I'm all for original artwork, especially when it's illustrated like this. It looks very colourful, looks really nicely designed, and I think this image is pretty good. The rest of the packaging is largely a window display where we can see the figure and all his accessories in his glory. And to really emphasise the figure, they've put a yellow backed interior inlay as well, so that really makes the figure pop, makes it stand out, and it looks really presentable. So I think this looks pretty good in its packaging, and you can hang this on your wall or on your shelf somewhere, and it looks nice. And interestingly, I note in the bottom left hand corner there we have the NECA logo, which looks very different to how I'm used to seeing it. So I'm not sure whether they've done that just for this line of toys or whether they've updated their logo. He does come in a nice chunky box, so on the side panel we have a nice circular image of the figure itself, which I think this is quite cool, quite retro looking. I really like this effect, and of course we have the Defenders of the Earth logo. Otherwise quite simple, but this looks nice on the shelf, and when you stack it up with the other figures it is consistent and it looks pretty good. And then on the reverse we have the Defenders of the Earth logo with the characters over the earth, which is a nice image. I like this. I like there's a little bit of blurb there. Our duty is clear, the time is now. Fate has decreed that we are Defenders of the Earth. Yeah, I like this. This is really cool. And of course we have the full lineup of characters there. This feels kind of retro to what we might see in the packaging of the original figures, so I really like this. Very fond of this idea. And then in the bottom left hand corner we have a nice large image of Ming there, which looks pretty cool, and there's a little bit of blurb about the character. So all in all, really like this packaging. This is a very nice retro design. So it was almost instantaneous. As soon as I liberated Ming from his packaging, I fell in love with this figure. There's no denying that the presentation of this figure is excellent. He's really colourful and really fun. The head sculpt and the detailing and the paint apps on this figure are excellent. I really love all the details. If we look at how they've put a paint wash over that fantastic sculpt, we can see there's a darkness under the eyes. They've just drawn out so much in this figure. It's absolutely fantastic. And if we look at that collar as well, which is a separate piece, it's just wonderful. Like, it's just so colourful and it's so evocative. Clearly, it's a lot more detailed, a lot more realistic than what we see in the animated series, but that is a massive plus because I just think they've just done a tremendous job of this figure and the presentation of it, because they've taken something and added much more to it, but in a really good way. So I love this. I just think this is really fantastic. And the same rings true for the rest of this figure. The body mould is pitch perfect. It looks really good, and of course very nicely painted. The paint apps are perfect. There's no smudging or creasing or blaring anywhere, and they're all complementary colours. It looks really good stuff, and I really like the belt sort of skirt effect as well. There's a separate rubber piece that goes around, but it fits nice and tightly. It looks really good, and again very beautifully painted, and I just think it's really evocative. There's so much to look at on this figure. The eyes darting all over the place, taking in all different colours and little details, and I just think he looks fantastic on display. And again, we can see that great sculpting running through the arms. On the gun, there we can see ever so slight smudge of the paint of the black going over the gold there, but that's the only occurrence on this figure, and I'm willing to overlook it because it's so small. But the hand sculpt, again, very nicely done. You can see there's an extra paint wash running over the green, so it is enhanced, making sure that we get the little details of the veins. The fingernails are painted, and of course we have that wonderful paint application on the ring as well. They've opted to give him a cloth material cape as well. It is two tones. It is made of a silky effect material. There is purple on the outside, it has a red lining, and it is articulated with a wire around the edges, so you can pose it in many dramatic poses to create maximum effect, which is fantastic. So as we can see here, it can be spread out to look really cool, it can wrap around him, whatever you want to do with it. It is a tool for dramatic effect, and it works perfect. The silky material obviously really catches the light as well and bounces it back, so it looks really colourful and dramatic, and it overall just adds an extra texture, an extra layered dimension to this figure. Okay, so moving on to the articulation, he has a ball jointed head, so he can spin his head right the way around, he can look up and down, and this works perfectly well. You might be worried about that collar, but actually it is a flexible rubber, so it works with the articulation and it does not hinder the head movement at all. So this all works really, really well. Very, very pleased with this. He's also got a ball jointed shoulder, so his arms can kick up a pretty good distance, and he then has a complementary bicep swivel as well. He also has a double jointed elbow, and he has a pin swivel at the wrist, so his hand can rotate 360 degrees, and of course it will also hinge inwards and outwards as well, which is fantastic. He also has a swivel at the waist, so he can move from side to side comfortably, but he also has a supporting ab crunch as well in the sort of the middle of the torso there, so he can bend forwards and backwards, although I must say this is one of the areas where it's not 100% effective, because mine certainly seems to be a little bit stuck. It seems to be quite limited in just how far I can lean forwards or backwards. He's got ball jointed hips, of course. His legs can kick out to the side, they can kick forwards and backwards, and then this is all supported with a double jointed knee as well. But on top of that, we've been spoiled because we also have a swivel at the top of the boot as well, which looks really cool. And finally, there is a ball joint in the ankle as well, meaning of course that the foot can lift up and down, it can hinge up and down. There is added toe articulation, but of course the foot can also swivel from side to side as well. But added to this, Ming also comes with a whole host of extra goodies in terms of accessories. He has a blaster, two different blaster effects, a short range one and a long range one, his staff, an alternate hand, and his sword. And these are all meticulously sculpted and beautifully painted. And because there's so many, you're kind of spoiled for choice for the amount of dynamic poses that you can create with this figure, and just the limitless potential for different diorama pieces that you could create with this range of accessories is fantastic. And it all adds up to this figure being tremendous value for money, making him really fun, very presentable, and it just feels like you can get so much out of this figure. So I have to say, I absolutely love this guy. For me, he is a 5-star figure. He's definitely one I was looking forward to getting my hands on, but he surpassed my expectations, which were already pretty high. I love everything about this figure. It seems to me like he's the perfect blend between the materials they've used, obviously having that cloth cape as well as the hard plastic and the rubbers, gives him lots of different textures. I think the sculpting is fantastic, the paint apps are excellent, the accessories are numerous, and the articulation scheme is enough without being too much that it compromises the overall aesthetic, but it gives you so much range to create different poses and dynamic displays. So for me, yeah, absolutely 5 stars. Love this. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.